and all the coolant was running out from under the car, but so was all the engine oil. Hey there, and welcome to Matt's Garage and Car Stories with Matt. Now, if any of you have ever owned a car where you said, doesn't matter if it breaks down, because if it breaks down, I'm just going to leave it by the side of the highway, this is a story about a car like that. And this was actually a 1985 LTD Crown Victoria, and so it was like the big full size, like what later became the Crown Vic. At that time they were still calling it the LTD, and it actually had the 351 Windsor in it, which is pretty much my favorite engine of all time, even to this date, and had 415,000 kilometers on it, which is well over 200,000 miles. But I think the car was $500. It might have even been $400. I can't quite recall for sure. But it was one of those cars that was parked by the side of the highway, and I had to call the number and then wait, and the people came. It wasn't parked at their place. It was at like some friend's place. And then the people came along, and it turned out it had been like their grandfather's car kind of thing, and everything had been in the family since it was nearly new and all that. And but when they reached in and hit the key, it just started right up and everything. So it seemed like a really solid car despite the miles. I did take it for a test drive, and everything worked. Everything worked good, the brakes, everything. And so I bought the car, of course, and it was at a time when I had actually I had another cheap car that I had purchased, and it turned out to have hidden mechanical issues when I bought it. So I was really kind of in a tight spot, because I didn't have really enough money to have a problem with this car or anything at first. But anyways, the car turned out to be pretty reliable, and I was driving it back and forth to work for quite some time, and everything was going good. And then I actually drove it to my parents' place, which was about a 7-hour drive at the time from me. And on the way there, I kept lacking power and stuff, and when we got there, my dad and I fiddled with it and discovered a few problems. One, it needed a new coil. The coil was failing, and it just wasn't getting good enough spark, and so we fixed that. And I can't remember if it was this trip. I think I made 2 trips out there in it, so it might have been on the next trip. I think it was, in fact, when the timing chain started slipping and jumping, and so again, my dad helped me, and we kind of ear timed it and adjusted the distributor until it ran good again, and then everything was kind of working good when I left there. But about halfway home, the fuel pump, it had like the old cam driven fuel pump, like the diaphragm, vacuum diaphragm style fuel pump, and I guess the diaphragm inside it was going bad. And so I got part way home, probably about 4 or 5 hours into the trip, and the car started really losing power and sputtering because of this fuel pump. But I was able to just keep nursing it along, and I at times couldn't make full speed, but I was able to get home. And so I got a fuel pump put on a couple days later, and that solved that issue. And so I kind of knew the car's days were numbered. I had a few other issues that were starting to crop up as well. And mind you, I'd driven it for a few months at this point, so it didn't really owe me a whole bunch. I put quite a few miles on it already, and so what I started doing is just shopping for a better car. I was going to finance one at this point, and so I actually ended up buying a 99 Ford Taurus, and it was at a dealer quite a ways away, and I had made a deal with them that they were going to give me $500 for the LTD, and I was just going to use it to get up there to this Taurus. And so I'd put a deposit down on the Taurus type thing. It was my car, and I just had to get to it And I forget why, but it was like a week before I could go up and get this Taurus. So I'm still driving around in this old LTD with the loose timing chain. And I think at the same time as this, I was trying to start a small business. And so I had driven into Peace River to actually look into getting some financing for this business plan I had. And on the way home, I had just kind of left Peace River and the car was running super bad. But, you know, same thing. I'd gotten used to just sort of nursing the car along, and it was always getting me home no matter what. And, you know, it had been really hard starting that day and everything, though I knew the timing was way off. And I think I adjusted the distributor again, but I knew it wasn't going to be long before, you know, it jumped again. So I was just trying to drive it really gentle and everything. So I'm heading home on the highway, get about 20 minutes out of town. And all of a sudden I start seeing splatters of green liquid on the windshield. And I knew that was coolant, so I thought I had just blown off a radiator hose or something. So I pulled over, and I can't remember if I shut the car off or it died when I pulled over. But either way, get out of the car and look under the car, and all the coolant was running out from under the car, but so was all the engine oil. This engine had literally, the timing chain had broken. Things had gone out of sync in there, and it basically blew up, and something must have gone through the oil pan because it was just gushing on the road. And so I happened to know of an auto record. It was just down the road. I'd actually been there fairly recent to that, and had their number in my phone and everything. So what I did is I called them up, and unfortunately I gave them some bad directions because I didn't really know where I was in relation to town. And I think I told them I was past them and I was before them, so they ended up driving the wrong way. And so by the time they got to me, they had, you know, driven quite a bit, and it was near closing time on a Friday, so they were a little annoyed and whatever. But so I ended up having to just give them the car. Like, they got it off the highway for me and towed it back to their yard, and that was it. I surrendered the car to them. And so I right away called up a friend for a ride, and while she was heading there, I actually got to talking to the guys there, and I'm like, oh, do you guys happen to have any cheap cars for sale? And they're like, yeah, we've got a couple out in the yard. They said, we've got an 86 Oldsmobile Sierra, and they had like an 88 Jeep Cherokee, and they wanted $350 for the Oldsmobile and $800 for the Jeep. So I went out and looked at them, and they started up the Oldsmobile for me and everything, and it seemed to run good and everything. So, you know, I had this Taurus that I had purchased lined up already, as I said, and I just had to get to it. So my idea was to just buy the cheapest thing that ran, just so I could drive up there and get around in the week leading up to that and everything. So I bought the Oldsmobile for $350, and you know, threw the plate on it off my other car, and phoned up my friend, and I said, oh, guess what, I bought a car, so you don't have to come get me. So she's like, oh, that's great. I'm just at a gas station. You know, she was about midway, and she was just gassing up. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. So I get out on the highway. I had to move all my stuff over from my old car and everything. So I did all that, got out on the highway, and this car was just running smooth as could be. There was no vibrations, just seemed like I got a real steal for $350. So I phoned up my parents, and I said, guess what? I said, my car just broke down. The engine blew up. And they're like, oh no, that's awful. What are you going to do? I'm like, already solved. I am driving my new car. I only paid $350 for it. It runs great. And right about the time I was saying that, the car died. And so I'm like, oh, Mom, I gotta go, and hung up and coast it to the side of the road, and it was dead. It didn't want to restart or anything. It was like it ran out of fuel, but still had fuel and everything. And so right away I tried to call back the auto wrecker, but because it was after 5 on Friday, they were closed and gone for the weekend, and so I had to phone up my friend, who luckily was still at the gas station just down the road, and I said, yeah, gonna need that ride after all. And I said, you wouldn't happen to have a tow rope in your vehicle, would you? And she didn't want to tow the car, so we ended up leaving it by the side of the road, and I went back with another buddy later with his pickup, and we just towed it on a rope back home. Now the funny part is, when we got back to the car and I just left it by the side of the road, there's a little note on the corner of the windshield, and it says, "Hi, I used to own this car, da 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 da, and here's the command start remote for it." And there's a remote sitting there on the corner of the windshield, and I grab it and hit start, and the car starts. I'm like, wow. So anyways, I think I tried driving the car at that point. I thought maybe it just had a glitch before, so I started driving the car, and about 10 minutes later it broke down again. And the guy who left the note had actually left his number on the note too. So at that point I phoned the number on the note, and I said, "Hey, I got your note. I'm the one that bought the little Oldsmobile here." And I said, "What's the story on it? Why does it die all the time?" And he says, "I could never figure that out." He says, "That's why I sold it to the auto wrecker." He says, "I just, if you let it rest, it will go again." So he says, "I just did that until I could drive it all the way into their yard and sold it to them." So he had kind of not disclosed the issue to them, and that's why they didn't disclose it to me. I learned later from another mutual friend that they were good people, and they wouldn't intentionally rip me off. But I actually lived, 45 minutes away, and I didn't have a car then, so I didn't really ever go back there or try to deal with them or ask them for any money back. I figured this car wasn't too bad, so I was just going to try and fix it, and I was convinced it was the fuel pump. So I remember at the time I actually had this little motorcycle, little street bike, and it wasn't, I didn't have a license was the deal. When I moved from Saskatchewan to Alberta, they took away my motorcycle license. And so I just rode it anyways. I needed to get around, and it was already pretty cold out too. This is like late fall. And so I'm riding around on this motorcycle. I went and got a fuel pump from Napa and stuff. And, go and install that. I had to drop the tank out and everything and install that, and start the car up in the driveway and let it run for 10 minutes. And sitting there running great, and I'm like, I've solved it. And so I jump in the car and I go to visit a buddy. I figured that'll be a good test. It was about 15 minutes away, and I made it about halfway, and the stupid car died again. Same problem. And so I was going to wait by the side of the road again until the car cooled off or whatever. And then somebody came along in a Super Duty and offered to pull me to the next town, which was where I was headed anyway. So I got it pulled there, and actually brought it to my friend's house and was working on it there, and didn't really get anywhere. So I dropped it off at this mechanic that was local. And I said, I'm willing to spend, I think I said $300 on this car if you can fix it, but otherwise just keep it. And so they were good people. They were trying to get it, they understood my situation, and they were actually trying to just get it running for me. And they actually phoned me up and they said, "We got it figured out. Your car's running great. Come get it. The bill will be $250. Everything's all good." And right when he was saying that, he goes, "Oh crap." He goes, "Never mind, it just died again." So they kept the car, and I talked to them later, and they said they just scrapped it. They tried a few times to figure it out, and it was one of those things they could never figure out some computer glitch or something. This car had the quad 4 engine in it, by the way. And so as it turns out, I ended up taking a Greyhound bus to go pick up my new Ford Taurus. And that car didn't work out much better. Ford Tauruses are not really renowned for reliability either, and I had a bunch of problems with it, and that's a whole other story. But yeah, that Oldsmobile was unfortunate. I always wondered what would have happened if I bought the Jeep they had for sale instead, but probably a similar outcome. It just would have cost me more money. The one annoying thing is the inside, that Oldsmobile, I remember it was filthy inside when I got it. The guy must have just been using it for a commuter car, and he had spilled food all over it and everything. You know, it was just gross in there. And so I cleaned it all up. I spent like half a day cleaning and detailing this. I think when I was waiting for the new fuel pump to come in or whatever, I did that, and it was all wasted because I never got to drive the car. And it would have been a pretty good car actually if somebody could have fixed it, because everything else on it was good. It was just this silly electrical problem, and it would always die. Thanks a lot for watching Matt's Garage and Car Stories with Matt. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day.